Cristiano Ronaldo has scored more than 900 goals, won countless trophies, and earned hundreds of millions of dollars throughout his career. But the most valuable thing he has ever given to another human being wasn't a goal, a trophy, or even money. It was hope. Somewhere in the world today, a young man is alive because of a decision Ronaldo made years ago. Somewhere else, a mother still gets to hear her son say, "I love you," before going to sleep because help arrived at the exact moment she thought she had lost everything. Most football fans have never heard those stories. They know Ronaldo, the superstar. They know Ronaldo, the champion. They know Ronaldo, the man who filled stadiums and shattered records. But very few know the story that came long before the fame, long before the private jets, long before the luxury homes, long before millions of people chanted his name. Because before Cristiano Ronaldo became one of the most famous athletes on earth, he was simply a frightened little boy growing up in a tiny house on the island of Madeira. His family didn't just struggle, they fought every day to survive. His father worked exhausting hours for very little money. His mother sacrificed everything she had to make sure her children could eat. Some nights, there wasn't much food. Some months, there wasn't much money. Yet despite all of their struggles, Ronaldo's parents never stopped believing their son could have a better future. As a child, Ronaldo noticed more than people realized. He noticed the worry in his father's eyes. He noticed how tired his mother looked after long days of work. He noticed the quiet conversations about bills that couldn't be paid. While other children were dreaming about toys, Ronaldo was dreaming about something else entirely. He dreamed about helping his family escape poverty. Football became his way out. Every time he stepped onto a field, he wasn't just chasing a ball, he was chasing a future. A future where his parents no longer had to worry. A future where money would never again decide whether his family could sleep peacefully at night. Years later, the world would see the trophies, the records, and the success. What they wouldn't see were the memories that never left him. Because no matter how famous he became, Ronaldo never forgot the feeling of watching the people he loved struggle. He never forgot what it felt like to be powerless. And one night, after hearing his parents talk about money once again, he made a promise to himself. It wasn't written down, nobody witnessed it, nobody applauded it, but it would become one of the most important promises of his life. If he ever escaped poverty, he would never forget the people who couldn't. At the time, he was just a scared boy with impossible dreams. He had no way of knowing that years later, a desperate letter from a family he had never met would arrive on his desk and force him to decide whether that childhood promise was real or just another dream left behind. Years passed. The frightened boy from Madeira became one of the most recognizable athletes on the planet. Cristiano Ronaldo was now playing in front of tens of thousands of fans every week. He had achieved the dream he once chased on the dusty streets of his hometown. His family no longer worried about paying bills. His mother no longer had to wonder how she would put food on the table. The life he had promised himself as a child had finally become reality. But there was one thing success could never erase: his memories. Every time Ronaldo saw a struggling family, he saw a reflection of his own childhood. Every time he heard about parents unable to help their children because of money, he remembered the fear and uncertainty he had witnessed growing up. Fame had changed his life, but it had not changed his heart. Then one ordinary morning, something happened that would stay with him forever. Among the thousands of messages, sponsorship requests, fan letters, and business documents arriving every week, a small envelope caught someone's attention. It wasn't from a company. It wasn't from a journalist. It wasn't from a football fan asking for an autograph. It was from a family asking for help. Inside was a letter written by two parents living through every mother and father's worst nightmare. Their young son had been diagnosed with a serious illness. Doctors believed treatment could save him, but the cost was far beyond anything the family could afford. They had already borrowed money from relatives. They had already sold personal belongings. They had already exhausted every option they could think of. Now they were running out of time. The letter wasn't filled with anger or desperation. In many ways, that made it even harder to read. It was simply the honest words of two parents who refused to give up on their child. They explained their situation. They explained their fear. They explained how every passing day felt like another step closer to losing the person they loved most. At the very end of the letter, one sentence stood out. "We know you probably receive thousands of messages and may never read this one. But if by some miracle you do, please know that you are our son's hero." Ronaldo sat quietly after finishing the final line. For a moment, he wasn't a football superstar. He wasn't a global icon. He was a little boy from Madeira again, remembering what it felt like when money stood between a family and hope. The letter stayed in his mind long after he put it down. He couldn't stop thinking about the child. He couldn't stop thinking about the parents waiting for an answer they never expected to receive. Then Ronaldo made a decision that would completely change the future of a family he had never met. And somewhere, without realizing it, a young boy was about to receive the greatest gift of his life. The family had no idea that Cristiano Ronaldo had actually read their letter. Days passed with no response, then weeks. Every morning, the boy's mother checked her phone hoping for good news. Every evening, she went to bed with the same fear she had carried for months. Their son's condition was getting worse. The doctors remained honest but cautious. Treatment was possible, but without immediate financial support, time was running out. The family tried not to lose hope, but hope was becoming harder to hold on to. Meanwhile, the young boy knew more than his parents realized. Children often understand far more than adults think. He could see the worry on his mother's face. He could hear the late-night conversations when his parents thought he was asleep. He knew something was wrong. Yet despite everything, he rarely complained. Instead, he spent his days watching football highlights and cheering for his favorite player, Cristiano Ronaldo. Whenever he watched Ronaldo score, he smiled. For a few moments, he forgot about hospitals, tests, and treatments. Football became his escape from reality. Then one afternoon, something happened that nobody expected. The phone rang. At first, the family assumed it was another hospital call. But as the conversation continued, the mother's expression changed. Confusion turned into disbelief. Disbelief turned into tears. She struggled to speak as she listened to the voice on the other end. When the call finally ended, she stood frozen in the middle of the room. Her husband rushed toward her, fearing the worst. Instead, she began crying and laughing at the same time. The family had just received news that seemed impossible. Cristiano Ronaldo had agreed to help. For several seconds, nobody spoke. The words didn't feel real. They repeated the message again and again, trying to convince themselves they had heard correctly. The boy looked at his parents, confused by their reaction. Then his mother knelt beside him and explained what had happened. At first, he thought she was joking. How could his hero possibly know who he was? How could someone so famous care about a family living thousands of miles away? But it was true. For the first time in months, the family felt something they hadn't felt in a very long time. Hope. The treatment moved forward. The doctors immediately began making arrangements. Yet the hardest part was still ahead. The surgery itself would determine everything. On the morning of the operation, the hospital corridors felt colder than usual. The parents hugged their son before he was taken away. Then they waited. Minutes felt like hours. Hours felt like days. Every time a doctor walked past, their hearts raced. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the operating room doors opened. A surgeon stepped outside. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then the doctor smiled. It was the smile every parent dreams of seeing. The operation had been successful. Their son was going to live. The mother collapsed into tears. The father covered his face and cried openly. Years of fear, stress, and heartbreak poured out all at once. Their nightmare was finally over. Somewhere else in the world, Ronaldo was preparing for another football match. Millions of fans would soon celebrate another goal. But none of them knew that on that same day, an entirely different victory had taken place. A child's future had been saved. Yet what Ronaldo didn't realize was that this would only be the beginning, because another story, even more heartbreaking, was already on its way toward him. Just when Cristiano Ronaldo thought the letter from the sick child would be one of the most emotional moments of his life, a tragedy on the other side of the world reminded him how quickly everything can disappear. On the 26th of December 2004, one of the deadliest natural disasters in modern history struck without warning. A massive tsunami swept across parts of Southeast Asia, destroying entire towns within minutes. Families were separated. Homes vanished beneath the water. Hundreds of thousands of lives were changed forever. Among the survivors was a 7-year-old boy named Martunis. In a matter of moments, everything he knew was gone. The giant waves tore through his community, carrying away people, houses, and hopes. When the disaster finally ended, Martunis found himself completely alone. His mother was gone. His sisters were gone. Most of his relatives had disappeared. Surrounded by destruction, he wandered through the ruins searching for anyone he recognized. Day after day, he fought to survive. He drank whatever clean water he could find. He searched for food. He slept wherever he could. For 21 days, the little boy lived through a nightmare that most adults could never imagine. Then rescue workers finally found him. Weak, exhausted, and covered in dirt, Martunis had somehow survived. But what caught the world's attention wasn't only his survival. It was the shirt he was wearing. Across his chest was the name of his favorite football player, Cristiano Ronaldo. Photos of the young survivor quickly spread through newspapers and television broadcasts around the world. Millions of people were moved by his story, but one person in particular couldn't stop thinking about him. When Ronaldo first saw the images, he wasn't looking at a news story. He was looking at a child who had lost almost everything, a child who desperately needed hope. Ronaldo immediately wanted to meet him. Months later, that meeting finally happened. Cameras captured the moment the young boy walked toward his hero. But what the cameras couldn't capture was what was happening inside Martunis's heart. For years, Ronaldo had been a distant figure on a television screen, a player he admired, a dream that felt impossibly far away. Now that dream was standing right in front of him. The boy smiled. Ronaldo smiled. Then they embraced. It was a simple moment, but for Martunis, it meant the world. For the first time since the tsunami, he felt seen. He felt remembered. He felt that someone cared about what had happened to him. Ronaldo spent time talking with him, encouraging him, and helping him believe that his future could still be bright. The meeting made headlines around the world, but the real impact happened long after the cameras disappeared. Because while the world moved on to other news stories, Ronaldo never completely forgot the boy from the tsunami. Years later, Martunis would continue chasing his own dreams, carrying with him a memory that no disaster could ever take away. Yet while this story inspired millions, another family was facing a battle far different from a tsunami. There were no giant waves, no collapsing buildings. Just a mother sitting alone at a kitchen table, preparing herself to lose her son forever. For millions of children around the world, Cristiano Ronaldo was more than a football player. He was proof that impossible dreams could come true. One of those children was a young boy growing up in a poor neighborhood where football was often the only escape from reality. Every evening after school, he would rush outside with an old worn-out ball and pretend he was Ronaldo. He copied Ronaldo's celebrations. He copied Ronaldo's free kicks. He even wore the same number whenever he played with friends. Life wasn't easy for his family. Money was always tight. Some days his parents worked from sunrise until late at night just to provide the basics. Yet no matter how difficult life became, the boy never stopped dreaming. His biggest dream wasn't becoming famous. It wasn't becoming rich. It was meeting Cristiano Ronaldo just once. Then one day, incredible news spread through his town. Ronaldo's team was coming to play nearby. The boy could hardly believe it. For weeks he counted down the days. He imagined seeing his hero with his own eyes. But there was a problem. Tickets were expensive, far more expensive than his family could afford. He knew his parents wanted to help, but he also knew they didn't have the money. So he never asked. Instead, on the morning of the match, he made a decision. If he couldn't buy a ticket, he would still go. He left home before sunrise and began walking. Mile after mile, he continued moving forward. Hours passed. His feet hurt. He was tired and hungry. But every step brought him closer to the stadium where Ronaldo would be playing. By the time he arrived, thousands of fans had already gathered. The atmosphere was electric. People were cheering, singing, and waving flags. The boy stood outside the stadium gates, watching everyone enter. He knew he couldn't go inside, but being close was enough. Or at least, that's what he told himself. As kickoff approached, security guards began clearing the area. Eventually, one of them told the boy he had to leave. The child tried to explain that he had walked for hours just to see Ronaldo. The guard wasn't unkind, but rules were rules. Slowly, the boy turned away from the stadium. His dream felt farther away than ever. Then, something unexpected happened. A member of Ronaldo's team noticed the conversation. Curious, he asked about the boy. Moments later, the story began spreading through people connected to the club. Nobody knew it yet, but the story was about to reach Cristiano Ronaldo himself. And when Ronaldo heard what the young fan had done just for a chance to see him, he made a decision that would change the boy's life forever. The young boy had already accepted that his dream was over. After walking for hours under the hot sun, after standing outside the stadium imagining what it would be like to see Cristiano Ronaldo in person, he was now slowly making his way back home. He tried to be brave. He told himself that at least he had come close. At least he had seen the stadium. But deep inside, his heart was broken. He had dreamed about this day for years, and now it was slipping away. Then, just as he was about to leave, someone called his name. At first, he ignored it. He assumed it was another security guard telling him to move along, but when he turned around, he saw a man wearing official team credentials running toward him. The man asked if he was the boy who had walked all the way to the stadium. Nervously, he nodded. The man smiled and told him to come with him. The boy couldn't understand what was happening. His mind raced with questions as he followed the stranger through an entrance he never expected to pass. Moments later, he found himself inside the stadium. Thousands of fans filled the seats. The roar of the crowd echoed through the air. His legs felt weak. For years, he had watched matches like this on television. Now he was standing in the middle of it. But the biggest surprise was still waiting. The team official led him toward a private area near the players' tunnel. Then he stopped and pointed ahead. "Wait here," he said. Seconds felt like hours. The boy's heart pounded so hard he could barely breathe. Suddenly, movement appeared at the end of the corridor. Players were walking out. Coaches were talking. Staff members hurried past. Then he saw him. Cristiano Ronaldo. For a moment, the boy froze. The world seemed to stop. The player he had admired his entire life was walking directly toward him. Ronaldo smiled and held out his hand. The boy couldn't speak. Tears immediately filled his eyes. Ronaldo greeted him warmly and asked if it was true that he had walked for hours just to be there. The boy nodded. Ronaldo looked at him for a few seconds before placing a hand on his shoulder. "Never stop believing in your dreams," he said. "People who work hard and refuse to give up can achieve incredible things." The boy began crying. Not because he was sad, but because he couldn't believe what was happening. Ronaldo spent several minutes talking with him, signing a jersey, taking photographs, and treating him as if he mattered. To Ronaldo, it may have seemed like a simple act of kindness. To the boy, it became the most important day of his life. Years later, he would still remember every detail of that moment. The crowd, the tunnel, the handshake, the words. But most of all, he would remember how a global superstar took a few minutes to make a poor kid feel seen. Yet what nobody knew at the time was that this meeting would create a ripple effect far beyond that single day. Because years later, the boy would make a decision that surprised everyone, including Cristiano Ronaldo himself. For most people, meeting Cristiano Ronaldo would become a treasured memory, a story they would tell their friends and family for years. But for the young boy who had walked for hours just to see his hero, that day became something much bigger. It became a turning point. Before meeting Ronaldo, life had often felt unfair. His family struggled financially. Opportunities were limited. Dreams felt distant. Yet after that encounter, something inside him changed. Whenever life became difficult, he remembered Ronaldo's words. "Never stop believing in your dreams." Those words stayed with him long after the signed jersey was framed and the photographs were placed on the wall. Years passed. The boy grew older. While many people around him gave up on their ambitions, he kept pushing forward. He studied harder. He trained harder. He refused to let his circumstances define his future. Every challenge became a reminder of the journey Ronaldo had taken from the small island of Madeira to the biggest stadiums in the world. If Ronaldo could overcome poverty, loneliness, and doubt, then maybe he could overcome his own obstacles too. One afternoon, several years later, the young man was invited to speak at a local youth event. Organizers wanted him to share a story about inspiration and perseverance. Standing in front of hundreds of children, he held up the signed jersey Ronaldo had given him years earlier. Then he told them everything. He told them about the long walk to the stadium. He told them about being turned away. He told them about the moment he thought his dream had died. And he told them about the unexpected kindness that changed his life. Many of the children listening came from backgrounds similar to his own. Some were poor, some were struggling, some felt invisible. As he spoke, he noticed tears in the eyes of several parents sitting in the audience. For the first time, he realized something powerful. Ronaldo's kindness hadn't only changed one life. It had created a chain reaction. The hope Ronaldo gave him was now being passed on to others. The story spread. More schools invited him to speak. More young people listened. More families found encouragement through his experience. One act of kindness from a football player had grown into something much larger than anyone expected. Years later, a reporter asked him what he would say if he ever met Ronaldo again. The young man smiled before answering. "I would tell him that he didn't just give me a memory, he gave me a future." It was a beautiful answer. But while stories like this showed the emotional impact Ronaldo could have on people's lives, another story was about to reveal a completely different side of him. A side that had nothing to do with football, fame, or even money. Because for years, fans around the world had been asking the same question. Why doesn't Cristiano Ronaldo have a single tattoo on his body? As the years passed, stories like these continued to spread around the world. People talked about Ronaldo's goals, his records, and his incredible career. Others talked about the kindness he had shown to complete strangers. Yet there was one mystery that seemed to follow him everywhere. Fans noticed it. Journalists noticed it. Even fellow football players noticed it. Cristiano Ronaldo, one of the most famous athletes on the planet, didn't have a single tattoo. In modern football, that was almost unheard of. Everywhere he played, he was surrounded by teammates covered in tattoos. Some celebrated victories with them. Others used them to honor family members or important moments in their lives. But Ronaldo remained different. Year after year, season after season, his skin remained completely clear. Naturally, people became curious. Interviews came and went. Questions were asked. Rumors appeared. Some fans believed he simply didn't like tattoos. Others assumed it was a personal preference. The truth, however, was far more powerful than anyone expected. Ronaldo had made a decision many years earlier. He regularly donated blood and wanted to continue doing so whenever possible. In many countries, getting a tattoo can temporarily prevent someone from donating blood. Ronaldo never wanted anything to reduce his ability to help others. For him, the choice was simple. A tattoo would last forever, but so could the impact of saving a life. Think about that for a moment. One of the wealthiest athletes in the world willingly gave up something millions of people considered fashionable because somewhere, a stranger might need blood. That stranger could be a child involved in an accident, a mother undergoing emergency surgery, a father fighting a serious illness. Ronaldo would probably never meet those people. He would never know their names. Yet he chose to help anyway. What made this story special wasn't the blood donation itself. It was what it revealed about his character. Most people only saw Ronaldo under stadium lights. They saw confidence, success, and trophies. But behind the scenes was a man who still remembered what it felt like to need help. A man who understood that greatness is not only measured by what you achieve for yourself, but by what you do for others. As news of his decision spread, fans began looking at him differently. They still admired his football ability, but now they admired something else as well: discipline, compassion, responsibility. Yet even blood donation wasn't the most surprising thing Ronaldo had ever done. Because years earlier, he had made another decision that shocked even some of his closest supporters. It involved one of the most valuable possessions of his career, and when people discovered what he had done with it, they couldn't believe it. For most professional athletes, certain trophies become untouchable. They are more than awards. They are symbols of sacrifice, years of hard work, and dreams finally achieved. Fans spend their entire lives hoping to see one. Players spend their entire careers hoping to win one. That is why people were stunned when they learned about a decision Cristiano Ronaldo made years ago. It involved one of the most valuable things a football player could ever own. Throughout his career, Ronaldo collected countless pieces of football history. Match-worn jerseys, championship medals, golden boots, personal memorabilia connected to some of the greatest moments of his life. Many of these items were worth enormous amounts of money. Collectors around the world would have paid almost anything to own them. But Ronaldo never viewed those items the same way others did. To him, they represented memories, and memories could be used to help people. Over the years, several pieces of Ronaldo's personal memorabilia were donated or made available for charitable fundraising efforts. Each time, the bidding climbed higher than anyone expected. Fans, collectors, and supporters competed for a chance to own a piece of football history. Thousands became tens of thousands. Tens of thousands became hundreds of thousands. The final numbers often shocked people. What happened next shocked them even more. The money wasn't used to buy another luxury car. It wasn't invested into another business project. Instead, it was directed toward causes that could change lives. medical treatments, children's programs, humanitarian efforts, support for families facing impossible situations. Suddenly, a football jersey became something far more valuable than fabric. It became medicine. It became opportunity. It became hope. One charity organizer later described the impact in a simple way. To most people, it was a collectible. To the families we helped, it was a future. That sentence stayed with many fans. It forced them to see Ronaldo differently. The trophies and awards that once represented personal success were now helping complete strangers. It was as if every goal he had scored continued creating value long after the final whistle. Yet what made these actions remarkable was not the amount of money involved. It was the fact that Ronaldo never seemed interested in recognition. He rarely spoke publicly about these efforts. He rarely promoted them. In many cases, people learned about them long after they happened. That silence revealed something important. Ronaldo wasn't helping people to improve his image. He was helping because he remembered what it felt like to struggle. He remembered the nights when his own family worried about money. He remembered the fear of uncertainty. And perhaps that is why so many of his actions felt genuine. As stories continued to emerge, fans began asking a different question. Not how many goals Ronaldo had scored, not how many trophies he had won, but how many lives he had changed. It was a question nobody could answer. And that unanswered question would eventually lead to the most powerful lesson of all. At the beginning of this story, we met a little boy lying awake at night in a small house on the island of Madeira. He wasn't dreaming about fame. He wasn't dreaming about Ballon d'Or trophies. He wasn't dreaming about becoming one of the greatest football players in history. He was dreaming about something much simpler. He wanted his family to stop suffering. He wanted his mother to stop worrying about money. He wanted his father to have an easier life. Back then, Cristiano Ronaldo had nothing except a football and a dream. Nobody could have imagined where that dream would take him. Over the years, the world watched him score goals, break records, and lift trophies. Millions of people celebrated his victories. Millions more argued about whether he was the greatest player of all time. But while the world was counting goals, something else was happening quietly in the background. A child survived and grew up because help arrived when his family had lost hope. A boy who survived a tsunami discovered that his hero had not forgotten him. A young fan who walked for hours just to see Ronaldo learned that dreams are worth chasing. Another young man found the strength to keep moving forward because of a few words spoken at exactly the right moment. Somewhere tonight, a mother will kiss her son goodnight because he was given a second chance. Somewhere else, a father will watch his child grow up because a door opened when every other door seemed closed. Most of these people will never appear in documentaries. Their names will never be printed in history books. The world may never know who they are, but they know something the rest of us don't. They know what it feels like when hope returns after you thought it was gone forever. And in their stories, Cristiano Ronaldo is not remembered as a football player. He is remembered as the person who appeared when they needed help the most. That is why the question we asked at the beginning of this video may never have a real answer. How many poor people has Cristiano Ronaldo helped? Hundreds? Thousands? Maybe more. Nobody truly knows. The number is impossible to calculate because not every act of kindness is recorded. Not every life that changes makes the news. Not every miracle becomes a headline. But perhaps the number doesn't matter. Because greatness was never meant to be measured by statistics alone. One day, another player will score more goals. One day, another superstar may win more trophies. Records are made to be broken. History always moves forward. But there is something far more difficult to replace. The feeling a person has when someone changes their life forever. That is a legacy no record book can measure. Years from now, long after the final goal has been scored and the final trophy has been lifted, people may debate where Cristiano Ronaldo ranks among football's greatest legends. Yet for the families who found hope because of him, there will be no debate at all. To them, Cristiano Ronaldo will never be remembered for a goal. He will never be remembered for a championship. He will never be remembered for a record. He will be remembered for something far more important. He was proof that a poor boy from Madeira kept the promise he made to himself all those years ago. And for the people whose lives changed because of that promise, Cristiano Ronaldo was never just a football star. He was the answer to a prayer they thought nobody had heard.